about an hour today.
Okay.
Unless if you guys have questions and want to make it longer, that's fine too. Okay, so first thing I wanted to talk about is advertising. So Ohio law requires, you guys should know this since you guys just passed. Ohio law requires, hang on, let me just take myself off. Let me put my camera on. I just realized I should probably have that on for the recording. Get my, sorry, bear with me. There we go. Okay. Since you guys both just passed at Hondros, this should all be fresh in your mind. The Ohio law requires that our brokerage name be equal or greater prominence than the agent or team name. Are you guys on teams? You guys are both solo agents. Solo. Okay. So, so the brokerage name needs to be more predominant than your names. So what is our brokerage name? You guys know which one it is in here?
Keller Williams Living.
Nope.
Living.
Living.
Yeah. So Keller Williams is the franchise name.
Okay.
So, but as far as the division of real estate is concerned, our brokerage name is Living. So, so we need to make sure that word living is more predominant than your names.
You can only just have, I mean, you can just have living and that's it on the card?
No,
Gotcha.
no. We'll get
What's
the
living.
okay, so here's a couple examples of predominance. And so which one of these is correct? If I was advertising my name, which one do you think is the most proper?
First one.
So let's call this one 1, 2, 3, 4. So is it 1, 2, 3, 4?
It could be two.
2? Which one was the other one you said could be?
I'm saying two now.
Okay. 2's right. Yep. Why? Why is 2 instead of?
Because your name is not greater than the brokerage.
Living is more prominent. Yeah. So with Keller Williams, we have, so our franchise, Keller Williams, we have to advertise Keller Williams.
Okay.
State law, we have to advertise Living. So number 2 is the right answer because the word for the state, living is more predominant.
Okay.
Why isn't number 1 correct? Exactly. If it didn't say realty, it could have been right. Number 3, where Rick Tannenbaum's big, is obviously, my name is obviously more predominant. And then number 4, no living, right? All right. Advertise a listing. So is it your listing? Then you can advertise it, right? Does it belong to Keller Williams Living, but it's not your listing? You want to advertise one of my listings? Is that okay?
Yeah.
If you ask, yeah, get permission from the listing agent. How about if it's if the listing belongs to another brokerage? Can you advertise that listing? Make a Facebook post, check out this awesome house in. If you get permission from who? From the broker, from the other broker. So yeah, so you wouldn't get permission from the agent because remember the agents don't own those listings, right? The broker does. So you might start with the agent, you might ask the agent, but you got to make sure you're getting permission from the broker, not the agent. And then yeah, so it says, do you have the permission from the Keller Williams agent? I would make sure that you have permission in writing, especially if it's from another brokerage.
Okay.
Make sure it's an email. Save that email. When you're advertising, if you're sending out any mailings, can you use your home address? No. Gotta use the brokerage address. So here's our brokerage address. Actually, we should have Suite 100 on there too. But you need to make sure you're using any marketing that's going out. If your return address or the brokerage address on the, if you're sending out a letter, it's not using your home address. It's not using, your other job's address. You're using this address on all marketing. If you're using an address, you don't have to use the address. You have to use the brokerage name. You don't need to have the brokerage address, but mailings, especially return address, should be here. Social media. There's a one-click rule. Guys, did they talk to you guys about that in Andros? You should be able to, within one click, know your brokerage. Okay. So the best rule here is if you are you guys planning to use social media? If you're using photos or something, just brand it with Keller Williams Living. You can brand it with our logo. Can have your name, your information on there. There has to be at least one agent's name on there. So can't just be branded to KW Living. You have your name on there, your phone number on there. But then again, make sure that equal or living is equal or more predominant than your name. That's probably the best way. It's just put it in the photo on Instagram, branded to KW Living and yourself. So if it's a link to a website, make sure that link, within one click, that you're licensed, right? Oops, there. Okay, so MLS, it's multiple listing service. We all know that. You guys don't have access to it just yet, right? You do. I saw you on there. You have to get signed up. That's going to be part of your onboarding. You'll get signed up, and then you need to know some of the rules. Did they make you take a class to?
Yeah, I'm doing like the YouTube videos right now.
Yep.
There's like 3.
Yeah. So this should all be.
I think the first video was like 25 minutes, second one was like 55, and then the third one.
And then they document, how do you know if you're on YouTube?
You have to take the test.
Gotcha.
So new listing entry. So you guys got your first new listing. Congratulations. Now we got to get in the MLS. MLS will teach you how to do the input, but you need to make sure that you know about the 48-hour rule.
Yeah.
So you have 2 business days to input your listing. So if you got the listing today, Tuesday, hey Karen, if you got the new listing today on Tuesday, you would have end of day Wednesday would be 1 day, end of day Thursday would be day 2. So you would have to have the listing inputted no later than 11:59 p.m. on Thursday if you took it today. Got it. So that's the 48-hour rule. Any changes to status? 48 hours. Okay. You're responsible for your own listings and you're responsible for the input. You'll get audited. Don't freak out when you get your first audit. They do random audits. They just want to see that you did things properly, and it's just a random process, and it'll happen eventually. And it's not that scary. You just have to provide them with whatever they're asking for. They may ask for a copy of your listing agreement. A lot of people are putting in properties that say sold before processing. I took the listing today. I didn't enter it yet. In the meantime, we accepted an offer tomorrow, and it didn't make it into the MLS before the 48 hours. So it'll say sold before processing. That's going to automatically trigger an audit, and they're going to ask for a copy of your listing agreement, a copy of your purchase agreement, make sure all the dates, make sure you didn't sign the purchase agreement before the listing agreement and things like that. So that's all going to be your responsibility to follow the MLS rules. Okay. And the MLS can remove your listings if they think you're not following. I think that's kind of the nuclear option. I don't think they're going to start going and removing your listings, but if you're not making changes, they have that right to do that. You'll know before they do that. They'll be contacting you and asking you for stuff, and it's only if you're not cooperating with them. The status is you got UCAS, or under contract allow showings. So when you've accepted an offer, you have your listing is active, you got your offers, you accepted an offer, you have a choice to put it under contract allow showings or under contract no showings. We used to call that contingent or pending. It's up to your seller if they want to be bothered with more showings, potentially more showings, or not. So you should ask your seller about that if they want to just stop showings and hope that the deal goes through. If they want backup offers, you can allow showings. Now you can't kick out your primary offer because you got a better offer the next day because you did allow showings. But you can accept backup offers at that point. Okay. The 48-hour rule we talked about. 24-hour rule for public marketing. This is coming from NAR, from the National Association of Realtors. We don't allow coming soon anymore. So we used to kind of build up the hype on a house. We'd list it, say coming soon. Sorry, Mario, you can't come in and bring your client in. We're kind of holding the floodgates until Friday afternoon, and we're gonna have 50 showings on Friday, and by Saturday we're gonna have offers, and by Sunday we're gonna accept one. That's the way we used to do it. They stopped doing that because of clear cooperation. So now the rule is our MLS stopped doing it because of they felt it was a conflict with clear cooperation. Other MLSs have different views on it, but we no longer have that coming soon option. And that's because of that 24-hour cooperation rule. So what that 24-hour cooperation rule means is that as soon as you start advertising that property any way within 24 hours, it needs to be in the MLS. So that may be a conflict with the 24-hour rule, right? I told you if you took the listing today, you have till Thursday. But if you took the listing today and put the sign in the yard today, now you're advertising it. So now you have to get in the MLS within 24 hours, right? Because if you post it on social media, now you could still post on social media in a vague sense. Like, I've got a new listing coming up in Maple Heights, without an address. You can advertise, you can post that like on social. Yeah, you can say, I've got something coming up in Maple, and yeah, I would still brand it Keller Williams Living. You can't sell it you can't sell your agent. You couldn't list your house by owner. If you're selling your own personal house or your investment properties, you're selling something that you own, it's going through Keller Williams Living. Yeah. The commissions are a little different for that. So, you're listing it through here, but you have some exceptions to our commission rules, and that's all in our policies and guidelines, which you can get online at kwagentguide.com. I think that's the right address. MLS classes are available. So besides, Alex, what you said you're doing now, those 3 videos and taking the quiz to have access, besides that, they offer regular classes as well. So you have to, I think they do them online and in person. I think they're in Independence is where their offices are. But I think they're all available hybrid. So they have classes about listing input. They have classes about best practices on how to set up searches, use the client portals. If you're setting up your buyer on a automatic search or something, they have all sorts of different classes that they offer. You get notified of that when you can find it on their website, on the MLS website, but also when you log in, they'll have announcements. A lot of times those classes are in the announcements, like the first second you log in, there's a big pop-up.
And because you're paying for it, MLS classes are free.
Yeah, those classes are, I think they're free. I don't think I've ever paid for one of those. I'm pretty sure they're all free. If there are paid ones, then they'll notify you before you sign up for it. You'll know about it, but I don't know that I've ever seen from the MLS any classes that require payment. I'm pretty sure they're all free. And then there's TOMK, or temporarily off the market. That's another status that we have. So if your client, this is an important one because our rules just changed recently on showings and not allowing showings. So we are going to start using temporarily off the market more than we used to.
Okay.
Temporarily off the market means just that. I've got the listing. My seller said no showings because I've got family in town this week and I don't want showings. We're taking it temporarily off the market. The rule with that is if you are blocking showings for more than 2 days,
Okay.
then you have to put it temporarily off the market. So if your client just says, you know what, I've got family in town and we're having a family dinner on Saturday. I don't want to any showings on Saturday this week. That's fine. You can block off the showings, no showings for 1 day, for 2 days. But if it's going to go longer than 2 days, you need to use temporarily off the market. There's a rule with that too, that if you use temporarily off the market, they'll go over this with you in the MLS class. If you use that status in the broker remarks, there needs to be an expected date back on the market. So whether it's 2 days from now or 2 months from now, you should put an expected date back on the market. Now it can change. It's just an expected date, so it could change. And you're allowed to go in there and change that if the client was doing a rehab, and they said it's going to be ready in a month and work's taking longer and it's going to be 6 weeks, you can go in there and change that expected date as needed. So those are your statuses that you need. And then of course there's closed. Once it's closed, you have to mark it as closed transaction in the MLS as well. Questions about MLS? There's fees for the MLS. It's $228 every 6 months. We pay that March and September, I believe. When you sign up, they will prorate it. So I know you just saw your bill, and it's not going to be $228. It's prorated. So they'll prorate it till I believe your next full bill would be in September, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's March and September when we pay. So they'll prorate you through the September and then you'll pay again in September. It includes your Supra access. Supra is our electronic keys that we use in the area. Are you guys both mostly in Cuyahoga County, or? Yeah. You're not going to find these electronic lock boxes very often. Honestly, I just ran in last week. I had to use one for the first time in probably 6 or 7 years. They're more common if you guys go down, even in Summit County, they're not as prevalent. If you get down into like the Canton area, you'll start to see them. Either way, it's free. And the way it works is you sign up through Supra, you tell them that you're part of MLS Now, and then you get your login for free. It's an app on your phone, and it's pretty simple to use. You open the app, you have to enable Bluetooth. When you get to the lockbox, you just say I've arrived, and you click it and it sends some signal to the box and the box pops open. It's fairly simple to use, and it's included in our MLS fees. So I would suggest signing up for it so that you have it in case you need it. So I never signed up for my free account because I never needed it until this last week. And then I was scrambling and it was fairly easy. I just did it last week or 2 weeks ago. And it was pretty easy. And I would suggest just having it, even if you never use it, because it's not a very common lockbox type. The more common lock boxes are the combination lock boxes that we put up on our houses. The Supra boxes, if you want to put one up on your listing, it's definitely more secure. An agent, while it's unethical to share that code, somebody could share that code with somebody who's not a licensed agent, and somebody might be coming into your client's house. So the Supra lock boxes are definitely more secure, because if you don't have the Supra account, and not anybody can just sign up for the Supra account, then you can't open that box. So it's definitely more secure, but it's just not common practice in our area. If you want to use those for your listings, you will have to purchase the lock box from I think ACAR or MLS Now. Probably MLS Now is where you would buy it, but your board may also have it. When you
Are we providing regular combination lock boxes?
no, you
too?
buy those. Yeah. A good place to buy them, where I usually buy them, is
I got like 2 of them already.
okay.
Hardware stores.
Yeah, hardware stores have them. Home Depot has it. You can find it places like that. I like to buy them at MFS Supply. They're actually right up the street from our office on Solon or Aurora. They're on Solon Road. Not far from our office. What they sell is they've got supplies for like rehabbers. You can buy cabinets and doorknobs and
So
things
since
like
we're
that.
under 1099, you could write off all of that stuff. Anything that you buy.
Absolutely, you should. Yeah, you should be writing that off as a business expense for sure. So yeah, they have like builders, like rehabber supplies, and then they have stuff that agents would use, like lock boxes. During the height of the pandemic, I bought a bunch of masks from there. They've got hand sanitizer, things like that if you need. But the most common thing that I, as a realtor, would buy from them is the lock boxes. Their lock boxes also are branded. You can get the Keller Williams. You can has a front. The front has Keller Williams logo on it. So they're going to be cheaper at MFS because they're a wholesaler, and you can just walk in there. They have a showroom. You just walk in there and you can buy them. I think they're $20 or $25 a piece last time I bought them. Photos for the MLS. We have to have at least one photo. Can't put a listing in with no photos. So, and that photo, you guys know what photo that has to be?
Has to be front with no signs.
Exactly. Yeah. Can't be branded, no signs, has to be an exterior front at the very minimum. Do you guys know how many photos we're allowed to have in the MLS, what the max is? 35 is our max right now. So we can put up to 35 photos. When I list a house, I try to get, if it's a nice house or even a decent house, I try to get as many photos as I can of each room. So I try to max it out at 35. That's a lot of pictures. So sometimes you might not be able to get there, but at the very minimum, you need an exterior front photo, and make
I
sure.
hate when they do that. Like, oh, something must be wrong with the inside.
Yeah. Or, I've sold for sale by owners before. So if you sell for sale by owner, you can enter it into the MLS as a comparable only. So you still need a photo. Well, I'm not going to take a for sale by owner that's already closed. I represented the buyer. They were unrepresented. It just closed, and now I'm adding it to the MLS. I'm not going to go hire a photographer to take 35 photos of it. I'll just go take the exterior front picture. Just make sure you will get a violation from the MLS if you have your sign in that photo. So no branding in that photo, period.
What about the description? Are we trying how to do all that?
No,
freestyling.
Yeah, I mean, that's up to the agent to write their own descriptions of the property. I think, just try to be
Yeah, but
creative.
you can't just, every property is different anyway, so you just can't have a template.
Yeah, there's no template for it. Just try to be creative. You might, as a new agent, you might start looking at a bunch of listings and start reading their descriptions, and you'll see what kind of hits you the right way. And yeah, just try to be creative with it. But again, in the remarks section, do not put anything that's branding it to you. Don't say call Mario for tours, or don't put your phone number in there. Don't put your website in there. You can't put anything that would brand it to you. That's going to be a public, those remarks will be public facing. And so we can't do that, and even in the, and then there's broker remarks that are not public facing. You can put in there, with questions, call Mario, your phone number, your email address. There you're allowed to do that. Those are not public facing remarks. So there you can do that. Something that people, we'll talk about this in a few slides from now, but something that has been flagged in the MLS in the past is people like to put what title company they'd like to use. So we're affiliated here in the office with Ohio Real Title. So you cannot put in those you cannot put anywhere in the remarks, even if it's in the broker remarks, which is just between agents. You cannot put that we're using Ohio Real Title or anything like that. That's not allowed. But you could put your personal information into the broker remarks if you want to have them reach out to you directly for questions or something like that. And now we cannot advertise our services as free anymore. So even though your buyer is not paying you, potentially not paying you, we have an admin. So let me take that back. We have an admin fee in the office of $200. So your client is going to be paying, your buyer may not be paying your commissions, the bulk of your commissions, but there's an additional commission of $200. So first of all, it's not free because they're paying $200. Second of all, even if you choose to waive that 200, you can waive the 200. It'll come off of your commission. So the office is getting that 200 one way or another. If you want your client not to have to pay that, that's fine. Your commissions your services are still not free services. You're still getting paid for your service. It may not be coming from your client, but it's coming from the seller, and therefore your services are not free. So you are not allowed to advertise as free. You're getting paid, even if it's not your client's money. Make sense? All right. So here's our office information. So you guys have your license numbers. There's also the office has a license number. You may need that from time to time on the contract. Also, you may occasionally, for like a referral, if you're doing a referral where you're sending a friend to an agent in North Carolina who's sending you a referral fee of 25% of their commission, you may need our EIN, our tax ID number. So that's the 84 number. Our MLS Now office ID. So people get confused between our license number and our MLS ID number. Our license number is issued by the state. It's 2020. That's because we got a new brokerage license in 2020. When we changed our name from Keller Williams Greater Cleveland Southeast to Keller Williams Living. So they issued us a new license in 2020. And then our MLS Now ID 9181, that is an ID number from MLS Now. Don't confuse the license number and the MLS number. Those are two separate things. You guys are going to be, if you're not, Alex, I know you already joined ACAR. I'm guessing you haven't joined a local board yet since you just got licensed today. You're going to need to join a local board of realtors, so you can choose between any of the local boards that I'm a member of, which is ACAR, Akron, Cleveland. There's Elgar, which is Lake and Geauga County Board of Realtors. You can choose to join Ashtabula County Realtor. No, their fees might be slightly more or less depending on who you join, but the bulk of your fees. So when you join a local board, you're also joining the state and national boards. So when you join, I'm gonna make an assumption you're joining ACAR because you're in Cuyahoga County. If you join ACAR, I can't remember the cost of joining right now. Do you remember since you just did it?
Yeah, it was $475.
$475 for, that must be prorated, 475, and it's probably like $6 something a year. Now, most of that fee is your state and national dues. So it's paying for all three: state, national, state, and local. So the bulk of it is your national and state. So that's not going to change if you join ACAR or Elgar. And then the local dues is what might fluctuate between one or the other. They're all. Garrett will help you get that information when you do your onboarding stuff. Yeah, and you'll need to join them first before you can join the MLS. So the National Association of Realtors, they have something called your NERDS ID number. They actually changed it as of January of this year. Now it's called your M1 number. And that's just going to be your individual ID number for joining the National Association of Realtors. I have mine written down on my desk. You're going to need it very infrequently. And if you forget it, when you go to NAR's website, you will be able, there's a way to do a lookup. So that's the way I used to do it until I decided to just write it down, and now it's on my desk. But if you choose not to write it down or save it somewhere, you forgot where you wrote it down or saved it, you can always find that number on their website. But yeah, each agent has their own ID number. Your M1 is going to be unique to you. All right. Commissions. So there's antitrust laws. So we're not allowed to have conversations outside of these walls with other brokers, other agents from other brokerages about our commissions. Right? We're not allowed to price fix. You guys that should all be fresh from Hondros in your mind, right? Within our brokerage, we're allowed to discuss that because we're allowed to, as a brokerage, we're allowed to make those decisions. We just can't collaborate with other brokerages, right? Keller Williams allows you to choose your own commission. So if you want to charge 10% and people are paying you 10%, then charge 10%. If you want to do 7 or 6, the only stipulation that we have is that your commission, so your side of that commission, has to be a minimum of 2% on average for any 12-month period, any rolling 12 months. So if we look back at your last 12 months, you have to have at least an average of 2% on your side of the deal. That doesn't mean you're taking a listing at 2% and you're giving a buyer's agent 1 and you're keeping 1. Your commission needs to be on average of 2%. That's up to you guys how you structure it. You should be charging more than 2% for your own side, though. We have value. We need to remind our clients, we need to remind ourselves that we have value and that we're not discount brokers. So when you list a property, you're going to offer in the MLS a co-broke fee. So that's going to be you're the listing agent. Your listing agreement says how much you're charging. And then you're going to be offering the buyer's agent a portion of that. So let's just say for easy math's sake now, your commission's a 6% commission and you're offering a co-broke 3%. So you're getting 3 and they're getting 3. You may choose to pay a co-broke 3% on the first 100, 2% on the balance. That's a pretty common practice that we see a lot. You could do 2.5%, but your listing agreement is going to be the full commission, and then the co-broke is going to come off of that, right? The MLS is our contract of that commission. So if you're a buyer's agent now, whatever the MLS listing says it's offering is what you're getting as your commission. I would recommend when you're writing an offer to save a copy of the MLS sheet. You can save a printout of that where it shows you what your commission is. Just save that in your file in .loop, which is what we use to file all our documents. Just save that in that. First of all, that's a required document when we get to compliance that you're going to need the MLS sheet, but it's good practice to have that saved right away. Just so that the agent, not that they would, but in case we get a sneaky agent who decides to change it later, now you know that the day that you wrote the offer, they were offering that 3-2 split or whatever it was. So you have documentation of that. Required forms. So I just mentioned compliance. You're going to see when you're doing your forms in .loop. The best way to do it is when you open up your file, and you guys are going to learn how to use .loop in your onboarding process. When you pull up a file type, say I'm doing a listing, I'm going to pull in all the documents I need for the listing. There's also going to be a listing checklist, and that's going to tell you what's required. It's going to say these are required documents and these if applicable. So the listing agreement is always a required document, right? Lead-based paint addendum, our lead-based paint disclosure may be an optional one, because if it's a new built after 78, then it's not required. So that one would say optional, or says if necessary or something like that. So you'll always need your listing agreement. You'll always need a consumer guide to agency relationships. You'll always need on a sale, you'll always need an agency disclosure. You may not have an FHA addendum. If it's a conventional loan, then if it's an FHA loan, you'll need an FHA addendum, right? And then there's the $200 additional commission we talked about. So we charge that on all deals. Every one of our clients, buyers and sellers, are always paying an additional commission of $200. Some of our agents are in the habit of calling that an admin fee. We're not allowed to charge admin fees. It's not an admin fee. Don't call it that. It's an additional commission. It's a commission, right? So make sure that you're calling it what it is, a commission, not an admin fee. And like I said before, if you choose to waive it, I've waived it for some clients, good clients of mine who I know are buying lots of properties, or I'm getting, they're buying a large property where my commission's really good, and they want to fight over the $200. I've waived it before. I try not to waive it, but there's times when it's appropriate to waive, and that's your decision. That's your business decision. Just know that when that commission check comes into the office from the title company, Keller Williams is getting that $200. So if you're getting a $10,000 commission check and you waive the $200, you're getting your commission based off of $9,800 instead of $10,000, right? The exception to that is FHA and VA deals. So if you're working with a buyer who's getting either an FHA or a VA loan, those are fees that are not allowed to be paid by your client, by your buyer. So if it's your buyer on an FHA or a VA buyer, their loan type will not allow them to pay that. And so in that case, the office will waive it and we won't take it off of your commission. If those are the only exceptions to the rule. When you submit that commission, by the way, you'll learn how to do that. Submit your commissions to the office. There's a comment section, and when we receive that commission check, we would not know that it's a VA deal or an FHA deal that it was waived for. So you have to notify us. When you submit it, you can just say $200 fee is waived because it's FHA or because it's VA. Make sure you let us know, because otherwise we wouldn't have a way to know, and you'll lose that $200. Oh, and with that $200, once you're capped, you get $100 bonus from that. So once you're capped, it's actually, the office is only taking 100 of that too. So you'll get 100 and the office will get 100. If you waive it, then you're not losing 200 out of your commission. You're only losing 100 out of your. No, the cap on your commissions is you're going to split with the brokerage up until the company, the Solon office, has received $18,000. And Keller Williams, hey Janice, and then Keller Williams International in Austin, they will take their percentage up until $3,000. So, yep. Showing times. So showing time is, have you guys heard of showing time before? Okay. We used to call it CSS, centralized showings. Now it's showing time. When we take a listing, this is part of your office fees. So you guys are getting access to showing time. What they do is when you take the listing, if you had to field every phone call from every agent who wants to schedule a showing, you guys wouldn't have time to do anything, especially in this market. You wouldn't have time to do anything but sit there and schedule showings all day long. So showing time is basically a call center. We list the house, we can list it one of 3 ways for showing instructions. We can say it's a go and show. That's great for vacant houses. We can say it's an appointment required. That's great if somebody's living there so go and show, it's a vacant house. You know, Mario, you call up and say, I want to show 123 Main Street. I have it listed as a go and show. They say, great, Mario, here's your codes. Here's how you get into the house, right? And then they'll notify me as a listing agent, but they don't notify the seller because they don't care because it's vacant. The other way to show it is appointment required. So I've got a listing, Mario, you want to show it. Janice is living in the house. So you're going to call, say, I want to show 123 Main Street tomorrow between 1 and 2. They're going to say, great, thanks. We'll call you back once it's approved. They're going to call Janice, say, Mario wants to show it tomorrow between 1 and 2. She's going to say, okay, they'll call you back and give you your codes. And now the seller is notified that you're coming. They've approved that showing. That's what we use for occupied homes mostly. The third option is a courtesy call, which is usually also good for vacant houses. Courtesy call would be that seller wants to know that you're coming in, but they don't necessarily need to approve it. So they'll give you the code when you call in. They'll approve that showing. Here's your code. Here's how you get in. And then they'll call that seller and say, Mario's coming tomorrow between 1 and 2. So that's what showing time does. And that's something that you guys are getting through it's being paid through your monthly fees that you pay to the office. So that's something all of our agents get. Also, when you're scheduling, most brokerages are using showing time, which makes it really easy when you're scheduling a tour and you're showing 5 houses to one client today, and you need to schedule them all. Most brokerages, I would say it's pretty rare that I go on a showing that's not with showing time. So it also makes it easy as a buyer's agent that you're calling one number or doing it online, and you're scheduling all of your showings with one company. Showing time is going to ask you for feedback after your showings. I think it's just common courtesy. Just give some feedback. You know, my client liked it, my client hated it. Why did my client like it? Why did my client hate it? You know, just give some feedback. It's common courtesy as a listing agent. You know, I want that feedback as a listing agent, especially if the house isn't selling quickly enough, then I need to go back to my seller and say, we need to adjust the price. and they're going to say why. And I'm going to say, well, look, everybody's saying the kitchen's outdated, so you can either update the kitchen or you can drop the price to reflect an outdated kitchen. But it's nice to have some feedback, and it takes you 10 seconds to let the agent know, right? When you're a listing agent, if we talked about blocking out showings, so this is where you can say, okay, my seller says no showings on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. You can go in and say, you can block out the showings for that time. Just remember, if you're blocking out more than 2 days time, they need to put the property temporarily off the market instead. You can get showing reports. So I use these all the time with my sellers, the showing reports. You can get all sorts of different reports from showing time. The one that I use most often is I can pull up a list of showings and feedback. So I can say, look, here's the 10 showings. Here's all the feedback we've received. And then that, helps support my request for a price reduction or not reducing the price, or why the offer at hand is a great offer because everybody else, gave us this feedback and whatever. So, so I use those reports often with my listings. By the way, there's also ways, I'm not very proficient in it, but if you play with the system, I don't know if Janice, if you know how to do it, there's ways to see, I've got a house in Cleveland Heights that's not had showings on it. Well, I can pull up all the houses through showing times. They can tell me that houses in Cleveland Heights have had this many showings. There's reports like that. So then I can go back to my seller and say, look, we've had no showings while most of the Cleveland Heights houses have had 10 showings. Something's wrong here, right? It's probably priced at that point. So there's all sorts of, they've got lots of different reports that you can pull up. But the one I use most often is the list of who's shown it and the feedback, with the feedback attached to it. You can text, email, or call your client. They can text, email, or call your client for approval. It's just most clients are doing text message, I think. It's probably easiest way. If you set them up to do a text confirmation, this is to confirm the showing. So if you have a appointment required, and they need to approve that showing, most clients are going to say, just send me a text. All they have to do is text back yes or no if they approve it or not. If you have them set up on text, but they're not answering their text message and the showing is coming up soon, they will start calling. And we've talked about go and show an appointment required already. All right, so now we have a listing or a purchase agreement, and who's going to sign that purchase agreement? First thing you need to know is the person single or married, right? In Ohio, we're one of 3 states that still has dower rights. It's Ohio, Arkansas, and Kentucky. So if you're married, your spouse has rights to this house, to the property. So it takes one spouse to purchase. So you can purchase on your own, but when it comes time to sell, you can't sell it without your spouse signing off on dower rights. And actually, you can't, in most cases, you can't purchase without your spouse's signature if you're getting a mortgage. So when your lender gets involved, most likely they're going to say, oh, you're married, we need your spouse to sign off on dower rights, even if the spouse isn't on the mortgage. Oftentimes the lender will say, we'll do the loan in one spouse's name only, which is fine. But typically they're going to want to make sure that that other spouse, the non-borrowing spouse, is signed off on dower rights. That being said, if they're married, I would just get both signatures. It may not always be required, but it's, I think, always best practice. That way, when it comes later, they can't say, oh, I didn't know my wife was selling this property and I'm not on board and I'm not going to sign the closing documents. And then your deal falls apart at the very end here. So if nothing else, I think it just shows the intent of the spouse to sign off on their dower rights later. So I would get both spouses. Trust. Is the property owned in a trust? Then we need a copy of that trust paperwork, and we need to see who the trustee is. Uh-oh. I'm gonna need to run and grab my charger here in a second. Hang on, give me 1 second. Okay. Okay, so is it in a trust name? Then you need to know who the trustee is. The way to know who the trustee is to get a copy of the trust. So there could be one person as a trustee. Sometimes there's successor trustees. So I might be listed as a trustee, but then upon my death, my wife is a successor trustee. So you need to know that. It'll tell you who's allowed to sign. It might be a co-trustee. So it might be it's my trust, I'm the trustee, and my wife is trustee. And then you need both of us, not one or the other. You'll need to know who that is. So the only way for you to know that is for you to have a copy of that trust.
The trustor is the person giving the trust.
The trustee is who is able to sign on behalf of
That will be a lawyer.
It could be a lawyer. It could be a lawyer. It could be, thank you. Yes. Yeah, that is. My battery is about to die. Thank you so much. My charger out of here. It could be a lawyer as trustee. It could be, people do like a family trust. I have a family trust, and I am the trust. My wife and I are co-trustees, so you'll know that when you look at the document that we both need to sign if we're selling real estate. You'll be able to know that when, if the trust owned our house and I called you to sell my house, you'll get a copy of the trust paperwork. You'll see that we're co-trustees. Now you have to have both of us to sign it. It may be that you're working with a successor trustee. It may be that the trustee has passed, and then you have a successor trustee. So you need that document to know who you're dealing with, right? And you want to make sure you're dealing with the right person the first time around, so that you don't have to go back and redo paperwork and then hope that the right person's on the same page as everything you'd already worked on. So get that up front. If it's an estate, so if the owner has passed and it's owned by the estate, you need to know again who you're dealing with. Does it need to go through probate? Has it gone through probate? Are there multiple siblings, multiple children that need to, or is one of them, are they married? If there's 3 kids and they're all married, you potentially are getting 6 signatures on every document, right? Is there a divorce going on? You need to know that. If your client is selling as part of the divorce, I would make sure that you should probably be talking or getting some communication from the attorneys to make sure that both spouses are on board. Because if they're still married, right? If they're buying and the divorce has not been finalized yet, you need to let your client know that, you should have them talk to their attorney about the consequences of buying a new house before their divorce is final, because they're still married. Their spouse has dower rights. It's not impossible. I've done this before where but I've done it before where they're in the middle of the divorce. It's not finalized. I just told my client, you should talk to your attorney first. The attorney said, okay, we can draw up something that says it's a non-marital asset. The other spouse agreed to it. Obviously, they have to agree to it. So if it's a very contentious divorce and they're not going to agree, then you're probably not selling them a house right now. And then we talked about dower rights. Right now, there's only 3 states left that have these dower rights, and we're one of them. It might change sometime, but right now it's how it is. So there's something called an escrow letter. That's how you get paid. That's how the title company knows what you're going to get paid, right? So the contract will outline what you're getting paid. The escrow letter is just going to be a summary that you can send to the title company. They're going to match up yours with the other agents and make sure that everything is the way it's supposed to be. If they're not, they'll reach out to you. And some of the information that's needed, and this escrow letter is a form that we have, so you're not going to be creating something every time. It's going to be a form that we have. And the information that you'll need to know is who's the buyer, who's the seller, how much are you getting paid, what's your commission, is there a home warranty, and who's paying for that home warranty. Closing costs, if there's any credits on closing costs, you can outline that there. You probably won't have any invoices to attach to it, but if for some reason something out of the ordinary and you paid for an inspection and you're getting paid back, that's where you can put that. Co-broke information, the closing date, the lender information, all that would go on there. If you're giving your client any concessions, that's where it would go to. The home warranty is a good example. Sometimes I, as an agent, have paid for the home warranty for my client. That's where it comes out of my commissions. So I'll say my commission is 3% minus $495 towards the home warranty. So the title company will know that I'm getting paid the full 3%, but they're only giving the 3% minus the $495 to the brokerage, and they're taking that other part to pay the warranty. Choosing title companies. So like I said, right now we're affiliated with, our brokerage is affiliated with Ohio Real Title. Title company is negotiable between buyer and seller. The old school rule is buyer gets to pick title company. Buyers and sellers don't know title companies. They just 9 times out of 10, they don't know the difference between any of the title companies that we may choose to use, right? But the old school rule is buyer gets to choose. I would argue that that's not the case, that it's all negotiable in the contract, especially if the seller is paying the buyer closing costs or any portion of. So if you're asking for any sort of concession from the seller to pay buyer closing costs, I would argue at that point, it's absolutely the seller's choice for title company. I would also say never lose a deal over a title company. It's not worth it. Most of them will match fees. So if your reason to choose one over the other is because that one's got lower fees, most title companies will match those fees. I think I've only ran into one title company that will not match fees. So they'll typically match those fees if the pricing is the problem. And we shouldn't be losing a deal over that. We do have, as a brokerage, an ABA, or affiliated business arrangement disclosure notice. So if you're using Ohio Real Title, we have to disclose that partnership between our brokerage and the title company. So everybody needs to know that we're shareholders in the title company. There's a financial benefit to us to use Ohio Real Title. Home warranties. So our office works together with with America's Preferred Home Warranty. It's not the only warranty company out there. There's others. There's 210 Home Warranty. There's Home Warranty of America. HWA is another one. There's several out there. I personally like America's Preferred because they let you choose your own contractor. And they let the work start before they've approved that. So your client comes home, their hot water tank burst, you've got water all over your basement floor. You don't want to have your client call a home warranty company and say, this is what's going on, and I've got water spraying all over the place. And they say, okay, here's a list of who you're allowed to call, and then you're trying to find one of their approved vendors. What is nice about America's Preferred is they come home, they find this problem, they can call their plumber of their choice, get the problem resolved, and while the plumber's got the water shut off and the problem is in the process of being resolved, they can call America's Preferred and start the claim. They don't care. They don't have a preferred vendor list. You can use whatever plumber, whatever HVAC guy, whoever you want to use, you can use them. So that's why I prefer America's Preferred Home Warranty, but they're not the only ones out there. You have to register. So if you're using America's Preferred, you have to register that, and you register them online. And Renee Kozak is our local rep, and she teaches a class, I think once a month, maybe twice a month, on how to register your warranties. You go online, you put in the information. You have to fill out, here it says data collection sheet, but actually if you do it online, it's a little different. But you have to register that warranty with the information that they request. If you provide them all the data that they're requesting, then you actually will get, they pay out $100 to the brokerage for every warranty that we sell and close. And that $100 is split 50-50 between the brokerage and you. So you get a $50 bonus every time your client, and you were the initiating one. If the listing agent is offering America's Preferred, they've already registered it, and you bring the buyer, that's fine. You're not getting your bonus. They still get the warranty. And one of the required documents in our forms is the America's Preferred Home Warranty contract. So there's the contract paperwork, and then there's a spot for your client to sign that they accept it. If they choose not to take a warranty, then they have to sign the waiver at the bottom of that contract page. We have to have that on every deal. The reason being is they will assist us with our E&O, errors and omissions insurance deductible, if there becomes a lawsuit from that transaction, as long as we've presented them with an opportunity to have America's Preferred Home Warranty or another warranty is in place. So they'll still assist us if there's the listing agent was offering HWA, so they got an HWA warranty. I would still have them sign the waiver, but that's the reason why they're assisting us with our deductibles in the event that there's a lawsuit on a transaction. Consumer guide. We have to have these signed by every client. We have to have them sign it the first time we meet with them. We should be having them sign it before they tell us anything confidential. So if we're talking about their financing, how they're going to purchase this property, you should have a consumer guide signed before you have any confidential conversation. I would have those signed every 3 years. And my personal practice is overkill. So I'm not saying you have to do it this way, but if I have a repeat client, I have them sign one for every single transaction that they're doing with me. It's probably overkill because the consumer guide is not specific to a transaction. It's specific to your client. So that's the way I do it, just because it's easy for me to have a new consumer guide signed in every single file, every single property address. But at minimum, you want them signed every 3 years. Exception to signing those at our first meeting. Do you guys remember that? There's an exception. If you meet them at an open house. Yeah, you don't have to carry a stack of these if you're holding an open house. You don't have to carry a stack and say sign one of these before you walk through the house.
Next time.
If you meet with them again after that open house, yeah, if they didn't have an agent, you pick them up as your client from that open house, have them sign at that point. Yeah. All right. Electronic signatures are okay on that, by the way. Everything that we do, electronic signatures are okay, except for depending on the title company, you may need a real signature on closing documents, but they'll deal with that. For what we do day to day, electronic signatures on a consumer guide, on contracts are all good. Showing houses. Just be mindful. This is somebody else's house that you're walking through. When you schedule the showings, they're going to give you instructions. It's going to say remove shoes or wear shoe covers. Just be respectful that you're walking through somebody else's house. So follow those instructions, pay attention to them. Keep in mind that it may be your client's home one day. So if you trekking through with muddy boots and messing up that carpet, that might be your client's carpet one day, but just be respectful of the house and of the showing instructions. There might be dogs in the house. Hopefully there's not, but if there are, hopefully they're crated. But sometimes there's dogs in the house. You need to just make sure you know about that before you go in. There should be instructions in the showing instructions that would say dog is home, cat's home, please don't let cat out of the house, something like that. Be on time. So we're going to schedule a house for 30 or 45 or 1 hour window. Make sure that you're there and gone by the end of that window time. So if you say between 1 and 2, that's okay. If you show up at 1:30, just be out by 2. You know, I usually schedule when possible. A lot of agents are restricting it now, but when possible, I try to schedule at minimum a 1 hour showing frame. Because if you're showing 5 houses and they really like that last house and they spent a little bit longer at the last one, you might not be on time to the next house. So if I have an hour time frame and I'm running a little behind, I like to do that. Some agents now more often are restricting showings to like 30-minute time frames, which makes it a little tricky. But just try to be on time. If you see that you're running late, call and let them know that you're running late. Either call the agent or call showing time. Probably call showing time to reschedule it as your best bet. Never leave a lockbox open. So you can get in big trouble with lockboxes. There's a lot of ethical violations that could happen if we're not careful with lockboxes. We never ever give out a lockbox combination to anybody. So when we get that code, that's our code, and don't share it with your client. Don't send your client there. Here's the code. Go show the house. Go see the house without me. I'm not available. Don't do that. You'll lose your license. Also, make sure that when you lock the lockbox back up, you're scrambling that code so it's not open when the next guy shows up. Never leave the door open for another agent. So, you know, sometimes there's overlapping showings. So I might have the key I opened up and somebody else might be coming in behind me, you know, 5-10 minutes later, there's another agent, another buyer walking through the house. What I do is I'm holding that key in my pocket. When I see somebody else walk in, I'm making sure that they're an agent. If it's not somebody that I know, I'll ask them for a card. And then if I'm leaving before they are, then I know I'm giving it to the realtor, not to some buyer, you know, somebody who's not supposed to have that key. So make sure you're careful with those keys. Leave a card. There's a couple of reasons to leave a card at your showings. You guys know what they are? Why would you leave a business card on the kitchen counter, dining room table, why would you leave a card?
If someone's wandering unrepresented.
Who he was there?
Well, nobody's walking through unrepresented because they're coming through with buyer's agents unless it's an open house, right? But you would, so there's two good reasons to leave a card. Number one is seller may want to know that you actually showed up. So it's a way for them to know that, yes, you were there. The other reason, good reason to leave a card is, although it doesn't happen much in this market, it used to happen all the time where houses didn't sell. And when it didn't sell, now they've got your business card. So when their listing expires, they may be calling, oh, Alex has shown my house 5 times. Maybe I should reach. She seems like she's ambitious. So let's give Alex a call. Oh, I've got her contact information right here. So there's a few reasons to leave it behind. Make sure you leave it. And then do you turn off the lights or leave them on? Sometimes you have instructions. Sometimes the seller will leave a note for you, leave lights on because there's other showings coming behind you, or I try to leave the house the way I found it. So if the lights are off, I'm going in, turning on lights because I want my seller or my buyer to see it as nicely as possible. So I'll be flipping on lights, but if the lights were off, I'll make sure they're shut off. Typically, I like to leave it how I found it, unless there's instructions otherwise. And make sure all the doors are locked. If there's alarms, sometimes you get alarm information. Speaking from experience, make sure you check that if there's an alarm before you walk in the house, because I've walked in the house and not realized there's an alarm and it starts screaming at me and I didn't get there in time, and I've set off alarm systems before because I wasn't prepared to go shut it off. So if there is an alarm on, you should have that in your showing instructions. So just make sure that you know that before you walk in. And if you're supposed to set the alarm, make sure you reset the alarm before you leave. Feedback, we talked about giving client feedback. There's a couple ways you can do it. The easiest way is if the listing is through showing time, you're going to get an email asking you for feedback. You can provide that through the app or through the email. You can click on the link that you get through the email. It's just, like I said, common courtesy. Give the agent some feedback of, we like it, we're interested, we're definitely writing, we're definitely not. And if we're not, why? It's, for the amount of work that this house needs, it's just priced too high for my client, or we love it, you should be expecting an offer to come. So showing times is the easiest way to do it. But if it's not set up through showing time, you may have to provide feedback some other way, calling the agent, texting the agent. Try to give as much feedback as you can. Working with other agents, this is really important. You may be on the other end of a negotiation with the agent, but we need to be courteous. We need to be respectful. We need to remember that at the end of the day, it's not our decision, it's our client's decision. And we're doing what our clients are asking us to do, and we want to be well respected in the industry, right? It doesn't help to have an adversarial relationship with a co-broke, whether they're in our brokerage or any other brokerage. You just don't want that, right? It only helps us to create a win-win when we have good relationships with our co-brokes. So it's important not to do right by your client, but also to be courteous through the process with your co-broke. There's going to be times when you're in a multiple offer situation and the listing agent may be presenting 5 offers. One of them is yours and one of them is mine. And they're going to say, I don't know Rick, but I've worked with Mario before and he's a great agent. And I know he's going to get this deal done. Or or the opposite. I've worked, he's got a bad reputation. Rick's offer may be a little lower, but I think we so it's important to have a good relationship, right? It's also important that we remember our fiduciary responsibility. So we know confidential information. We cannot share that confidential information. But we want to still do a good job communicating and working well with other agents. Earnest money, do we all know what earnest money is? Okay. So earnest money is typically deposited in a transaction. It cannot be cash. Never accept cash as earnest money. It can be a check, it can be a cashier's check, it can be a wire.
It could be anything about it.
Yeah, it's gonna be dollars though, right? It's gonna be money. In our deals, we're not gonna give up the family dog as earnest money. It's gonna be a dollar amount, right? So it can be a personal check, it can be a cashier's check, or it can be a wire. The easiest way to do this, so back up a second. We as a brokerage do not accept earnest money. So when you're filling out your contracts, don't make that earnest money payable to Keller Williams Living. We don't accept it. If there's a circumstance that we need to accept it, talk to me first, and we'll figure out if there's a way around it, but we don't like to have earnest money in our hands. It's too much of a liability. We're sending that to the title company. Title company can hold it in escrow. The easiest way then for them to deposit that earnest money is most title companies. Don't think all of them are doing it quite yet, but most title companies will have like an ACH deposit. You can go to their website. There's a link to make a deposit. You put in your checking account information, your name and the dollar amount, and then it'll do an automatic draft. And that's the easiest way to make that deposit without fees of a wire, or even cashier's checks.
Why don't you accept it? Maybe because it could go bad, but nothing could really good happen out of it, but it could go bad, like if you commit and doing something like that.
Yeah, we just don't want the liability of having it here. I mean, we have a trust account, so we have somewhere we could deposit it.
Right.
But we just don't, it's just too much of a liability. And when you get into a fight over who's supposed to get earnest money, we don't want to be holding on to that earnest money. So like I said, if there's a circumstance, I haven't come across it since I've been broker, but if there is a reason why you can't deposit it with the title company who's doing the transaction, then talk to me first, and then we'll see if there's a solution before we accept that earnest money. So the contracts typically say that earnest money needs to be deposited within 4 days of acceptance of that contract. It's your responsibility to make sure that that happens. It's not your responsibility to actually do that transfer, but it's your responsibility to make sure your client, if you're a buyer's agent, you need to make sure your buyer knows that within 4 days by this date, you have to have that money deposited. If it's not deposited within that time frame that the contract specifies, it's important that you communicate to the listing agent. It's not our job to make that deposit, but if the client doesn't follow the instructions of the contract, it is our problem if we haven't communicated to the other side that something hasn't happened like it's supposed to. So what I would do is, my client didn't deposit the money in 4 days like they were supposed to. First of all, I'm checking in with the title company. Have you gotten it? No. Call my client. Where's it at? Call the title company. Have you gotten it? Okay. 4 days passes. We don't have earnest money. I'm calling my client again saying, hey, we're past the dates that the contract says. You need to deposit this. Then I'm calling or emailing the listing agent and saying, just so you know, we have not received earnest money. I've been in communication. I've reminded them that they have to do it. I'll keep you posted. As long as you're communicating, you're not responsible for when something doesn't happen the way it's supposed to happen. But you need to be in constant communication with the other party once those dates have passed, so that they know I've been in touch with them, or I've been emailing and I haven't heard back. I've been calling and texting and haven't heard back, but I'm going to continue to follow up. Just make sure you're communicating that with the other agent if, once you get past those dates. Once that earnest money is deposited, you should get a copy of it. So best thing to do, I don't like to have copies of checks. So if your client's writing a check, the old fashioned way used to be send me a picture of that check or make a photocopy of the check and send it to me for my file. I don't like to have a picture of a check. I think there's liability with having account numbers and routing numbers. But when it's deposited with the title company, what I like to do the best way is I call the title company and say, have you received it? They're going to say, yes, we've received it. Great. Can you please send me a receipt? It'll say that they've got it, how much, the date that it was deposited, keep that in your file. We do need, that's one of the, we talked about compliance earlier. That is one of the required documents in our files to get paid. Who gets the earnest money back if the deal goes south? We're going to need a mutual release. And that mutual release is going to say who's getting the money back. Occasionally buyers and sellers are going to fight over that. And they're going to say, well, we're not closing on this property. Buyer says, I want my earnest money back. Seller's going to say, nope, we'll release you, but we get your earnest money. And while we fight it out, nobody's getting that earnest money. Only ways that earnest money gets released is number one, a successful closing. It gets credited to the buyer who deposited it. Number two, the deal falls apart. There's a mutual release. Mutual release says who's getting that earnest money. Number three is the deal doesn't close. And after 2 years of holding that money, the title company is allowed to return it to whoever deposited it. So that's the only way that earnest money is coming out of that escrow account. Seller net sheets. There's Janelle Kiefer, who's our rep from Ohio Real Title. She does classes. Again, I think it's once a month. It's online, it's on Zoom. And she can show you how to run a seller net sheet. So your seller is going to want to know, I sold my house for $200,000. What am I actually getting after I pay closing costs and commissions and pay off my mortgage and whatever? How much am I actually going to have in my pocket? They're going to want to know that. Well, the way to know that is to run a seller net sheet. It's an estimate. It's not going to be exact to the penny. I always put a, I send it out to my client. I always tell them this is a good estimate. There may be some other fees that the title company may charge. There may be, if we don't close on the date that I put on the contract, there's prorations that might be different with taxes or rents or security deposits. Those are all things that might change it. But here's a pretty good idea of how much you're going to have in your pocket. And most title companies will help you do a seller net sheet. And it's something that with Ohio Real you can do on your own. You just have to log in. Janelle will help you figure out how to do it. You just log in and put in the information that it asks for, an address, what are the taxes, what's the closing date, any concessions, whatever information it asks for, and it'll spit out a report that you can share with your client. Say, okay, we sold for 200, you're going to have 180. Oh, you have a mortgage, you're going to have 80. Whatever it might be. That's the end of my